All right, let's talk about two visas that most people tend to ignore until they've run out of options. The 491 Skilled Work Regional Visa and the 191 Permanent Residence Visa. These two don't get as much attention as the famous 189 or the shiny 190, but in 2025, they might actually be your smartest move if you're serious about permanent residency in Australia. The 491 and 191 are not some punishment for people who couldn't cut it in the big cities. They've quietly become one of the most reliable ways to secure PR. And this year, the stars are kind of aligning in their favor. So, let's break it down. The 189 and 190 aren't what they used to be. Let's be real. Everyone wants a 189 skilled independent visa. No commitments, no sponsorship, no regional ties. You're free to live anywhere in Australia. Sounds dreamy, right? The problem? It's almost impossible in 2025 unless you're sitting on 95 points, have a PhD, and can moonlight as a neurosurgeon. The competition is brutal, and the government has been clear. They're prioritizing occupations and areas that serve the regions. Same story with the 190 state nomination visa. Yes, it's permanent residency up front, but state allocations are shrinking, requirements are shifting, and unless you're in a niche occupation the state desperately wants, your expression of interest just sits there collecting dust. That's where the 491 steps in. Why the 491 is suddenly looking attractive. The 491 visa is a skilled work regional provisional visa. In simple words, it's a 5-year visa that lets you live, work, and study in designated regional areas of Australia. After 3 years, if you've met the income and residency conditions, you transition to the 191 Permanent Residence Visa. Sounds like extra steps, but here's the catch. It's much more achievable than the 189 or 190. States have larger quotas for the 491 because the government is desperate to push migrants into regional development. If you're flexible with location, your chances shoot up massively. And don't panic when you hear regional. We're not talking about living in a tent in the middle of the desert. In Australia, even big buzzing cities like Adelaide, Hobart, and the entire Gold Coast are classed as regional. You could be sipping a latte on the beach in the Gold Coast, and technically, you're still fulfilling your dreams. 491 conditions. 491 means less. Waiting, more certainty. Think of the 491 as the shortcut in a system where everyone else is stuck in traffic. For a 189, you could be waiting years just for an invite. For a 190, you're at the mercy of state requirements that change more often than your phone's software updates. But for the 491, states are actually eager to nominate people. The quotas are higher, the competition is lighter, and the turnaround can be faster. In 2025, when immigration targets are shifting more towards regional development, your chances of success are far better if you go regional from the start rather than pinning all hopes on a 189 that may never come. The pathway to the 191, PR with conditions you can actually meet. So, let's say you get your 491. What then? You're on a 5-year provisional visa. To transition to the 191 permanent visa, you need to live in a regional area for at least 3 years, show you've earned the minimum taxable income, and obey the visa conditions. Now, these conditions sound scary, but they're actually not as tough as people think. Plenty of jobs in regional areas pay above that income threshold. Nurses, engineers, IT workers, tradesperson. If you're in demand, you'll hit that income figure without much trouble. And if you're working in 2 jobs or a mix of roles, it still counts as long as your taxable income reaches the mark. And honestly, 3 years isn't forever. Think of it as an extended working holiday with a PR prize at the end. Once you've clocked in those conditions, the 191 gives you permanent residency, with all the freedom of the 189 or 190, without the years of uncertainty. The lifestyle angle. Regional isn't a step down. Let's talk lifestyle, because this is where the big misconception lies. When people hear regional, they imagine tumbleweeds, cows, and boredom. But in reality, a lot of these regional hubs have great universities, thriving job markets, affordable housing, compared to Sydney's kidney-priced rentals, shorter commutes, and actual space to breathe. For example, Adelaide is a growing tech hub, the Gold Coast is booming in health and education, and Hobart is pulling in professionals with lifestyle perks you won't find in Sydney. Families often find regional areas better for raising kids. Less stress, more community, and more bang for your buck when buying a house. So, if you can get over the idea that only Sydney or Melbourne matter, the regional visa pathway suddenly looks less like a compromise and more like a smart strategy. The 491 visa is getting love in the form of more places, more opportunities, and more chances for people willing to give it a shot. The 191 is basically the government's way of saying, stick with us for 3 years in the regions, and we'll give you the keys to permanent residency. And with other visa pathways getting tighter, the regional route is turning from Plan B into actually the best plan. Common objections, and why they don't hold up. I don't want to be stuck in a small town. Fair. But remember, places like the Gold Coast, Newcastle, and Geelong all count as regional. You won't exactly be milking cows at dawn unless you want to. What if I can't make the income threshold? If you've got skills in demand, and if you're applying for a skilled visa, you probably do. There are plenty of opportunities. Regional areas are desperate for workers in healthcare, IT, trades, education, and engineering. Isn't it risky to go for a provisional visa instead of direct PR? Not really. The direct PR pathways are so clogged up that waiting for them is riskier. With the 491, you've got a clear, achievable path that leads to PR as long as you stick to the rules. A mindset shift: stop thinking of 491 as second best. Here's the truth. For years, people have seen the 491 as a fallback option, something you take if you can't crack a 189 or 190. But in 2025, that thinking is outdated. The 491 and 191 combo is becoming the main highway, while the 189 and 190 are turning into the tiny backroads with traffic jams and endless delays. If you want certainty, if you want a clear plan, and if you don't want to sit refreshing your skill select portal for eternity, then the 491 might actually be the smarter, more strategic choice. And who knows, you might end up enjoying regional life so much you won't want to leave, even after you get PR. So, why might the 491 and 191 visas be your best bet for PR in 2025? Because they offer something the other visas don't. A realistic pathway. You trade a little flexibility for a lot of certainty. You agree to live outside Sydney or Melbourne for a few years, but you get a faster nomination, a clearer route to PR, and access to cities that are growing, affordable, and genuinely welcoming. Instead of waiting endlessly for a 189 or competing with thousands for a 190, you take the regional route and actually move forward. So if you've been hesitating, maybe it's time to stop thinking of the 491 as a consolation prize. This year, it's starting to look more like the main prize.